we have an undeniable sexual chemistry.
Can we have sex just to see if I'm gay?
And it's completely not personal.
Yeah. Well, listen, he's married, 2 kids. Can I know her? And here we go.
You're pretty superstitious.
Very superstitious.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that sticked with, like, you know what it is?
Do you want to do it with me?
No, it's okay. I do it for my own mental thing. I do a little count into the episode, but we're rolling.
Okay,
It's
we'll
good.
do it. But like, I'm always like, one of the things, even though I was only Hasidic young, and then we grew up still religious, like
Right.
to anybody who even, like, I'm still the most religious. At my least religious in high school, let's say, like we were still kosher at the home, like Pesach, like the kitchen was covered in tinfoil, like just like so.
Just, well, for context, because we're all just getting to know each other now. So you grew up in
So I was born in Crown Heights.
Okay.
I had my early childhood only in Crown Heights. I'm one of 10 kids. My mother is Canadian, from Montreal, and when
Chabad Hasidic community.
no, she's Bal Tshuva.
I see.
Both my parents.
Okay.
And they tend to go a little hardcore. That's why the 10 kids by 30, they really did it, you know?
That's kind of surprising, actually, yeah.
Yeah. I've heard that before, though, that Bal Tshuvas go crazy into it.
Because I think of it like, if things have been like a couple degrees the other way, you would have just been born into like a totally, you would have just been like a normal person with a normal background. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like-
they
like,
wouldn't have
it's
had.
so-
Exactly. Yeah, it
always-
really is crazy.
I find it's the people who become religious. They're the most hardcore.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
the least flexible because it's almost like a transformative thing.
Yeah, they found
it's-
it, they heard it, they believe it.
And it's just like, this is it now.
Right. You would have just gone to like a public school and not had like a story.
Yeah, we maybe would have had like, my grandparents were like conservative Jews in the way that, like, you know, we know of secular Jews now, like they did the holidays, you know.
That's the kind of family I grew up in.
Yeah, so like that sort of thing, I think we would have done that, but I don't know, maybe we would have done the kind of thing that I heard people were like kosher in the house, you know.
Yeah.
But the one thing that really stuck, and then we moved
But
to
your
Canada.
father was native Lubavitch?
No,
Oh,
also
both of
Bal
them.
Tshuva,
Oh,
yeah.
And then they both were in Crown Heights.
Yeah, they both went kook mook. Like we
Right.
had on our house engraved my, Beit Chabad.
Right.
like,
What
the
got
whole
them?
thing.
It was the
My dad was in college, and I can't remember what happened there. And we don't have, I wish I could ask him, but we don't have much of a relationship now. We don't have a relationship now. But my mother, it's kind of that vulnerable thing. My mother's like, if you're asking if I had any friends, the answer is no. I'm like, all right, Ma. Like she was just, my mother's the kind of person that if you give her a pamphlet in the subway, she's reading it. She's involved. Like she's very easily
searching and...
Yeah, and she was only like 17, so she was a kid and looking for community, and like a lot of teenage girls or teenagers just in general.
Well, I guess you guys aren't that different because she went kind of extreme away from her family and you went extreme away from your family.
Yeah, but I'm not away from my family. My whole family's away. Like I'm close to a lot of my family.
Right. Well, I guess down a different path.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
necessarily,
And my
like,
mother
separated.
was on that path with us. Like my mother, we fried out as a family.
Interesting.
Which is very interesting. Most people, they leave and their whole family is in it. But my mother moved us to
that's what I
Montreal,
assumed the story
and
was.
we were less and less religious over the years. I wouldn't say it took 1 year. Some people are like, as soon as you moved to Montreal, I was like, no, like I was kosher probably till 19. And that's even after I moved out of the house. I kept that. Yeah. But the thing that I still keep to this day, I have some, I listen, I have a mezuzah on my door. I'm not an animal. There's certain things like, come on, like, there's certain things. But the superstition, I always joke that like I have OCD, but I don't know if it's OCD or it's superstition or it's like the things I grew up with, like, like kissing the mezuzah. I do that. Okay, fine. Starts that small. Okay, I say the Shema at night. Listen, I'm not. What do I have, a death wish? No, we're saying the Shema. Okay,
We're hedging your bets. A
yeah.
Low risk, high
Listen. I'm already gay. Like, let's let's even it out. Hashem, I'm trying something. You can't say I did nothing.
Right.
Okay, and then but it even goes down to like putting my right shoe on first, which I don't even remember where that originated.
You do that.
But I'm like, since before I could talk, I was doing that.
Might be OCD.
Yeah, because you put your right foot forward, and I'm like, of course I put.
Jewish
So
law,
there's-
halakha has made us all
There's
OCD.
it's literally OCD.
Do
to
you
a
find
point.
that you're less, as your observance maybe dwindled? But it sounds like in your case, you still stick to certain things, but you're still religious. But even though
I
the
know
observance is
it's
there?
so weird
I see that a
because
lot in people too, where they're more religious than I am, even if I'm technically more observant.
I never said I'm
'Cause I'm such a
religious. Like
snag.
here's the whole thing. I always say I'm not religious.
Right.
And like the girl I'm dating, she's like, "You're the most religious person I've ever met."
Yeah.
No, but like to
You're
her,
screwed.
the fact I do Shabbos, if there's an opportunity to do it, I have some dykes around the table.
Yeah.
We do it, and everything I do is the Lubavitch because that's what my mother did.
Right.
So even though my father was in the house, growing up, my mother held the Kiddush cup like this.
Right.
When there's the father missing from the house, the mother takes it on, and she did it. And it poured over, and I find myself returning and doing to the traditions. I don't even like going.
Do you
Recently,
ever
I
invite
went.
men to the Shabbos?
What?
table? Do you ever
Yeah.
invite men? Okay.
Yeah, we have the honoraries. We get somebody going with a yarmulke.
Do they have to say Kiddush if they're there?
No, I'm probably the only one
Everybody
who knows
gets
the
a
Kiddush.
tester. Oh, look at this.
Yeah. Well, I once had a Passover Seder where a lot of dykes came, and we had an Egyptian lesbian.
Oh, very rare.
And I made her read all the parts of what the Egyptians did to the Jews out loud, and she was like, "I'm like, say it out loud. You can read in English."
That's part of it.
Yeah.
It's me too.
But I find, I went to a
You're
Reform
like, this
synagogue.
is for you. This is for you.
This is what you did. Repent.
Her family stayed, and we all left.
Oh, in Egypt.
The
Yeah.
Egyptian,
Yeah. Kicked us out. We should have cosplayed that.
Um,
But I went to this synagogue that was like extremely hippy dippy, even Reform.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if they would consider themselves Reform or whatever, but I would say it's a Reform show where, the women are rabbis or dancing around with songs, with guitars. And I'm going, no, this ain't it. I don't.
Yeah.
Either you're doing it.
Oh,
or
I
you're
know.
not
It's
doing
still, it feels foreign to you.
It's weird because don't change the tunes.
Yeah.
Let the Hasidim do the tunes.
It's all very high octave.
Shalom. It's got to be that.
Yeah.
We got to hear that. Like, this is a classic. Like, do not destroy the classics. Like, the songs aren't good.
Mm-hmm.
And even though they got guitars and the music stinks. It's bad. It's not, I'm not waving. I'm not getting into it. We're not, the benching after isn't a situation. They think, now we're going to, say the prayer after the meal. It's like, we give our thanks. It's like, fucking, just
If you're gonna do
get
it, do it.
into
You want
it.
the real
You want the
stuff.
table, covered, littered in food. You want
Yeah.
wine going. You want people singing. And I don't know. That's that is the vibe of Judaism I still like, even though it's such a weird dichotomous life.
Well, I'm curious about your relationship to sort of Judaism and religion. I mean, when did that schism really happen for you?
There's not a schism is the problem. Like, it's changed.
This is way more interesting to me than like ex-Lubavitch,
Yeah.
lesbian,
I
comedian.
know.
It's like that gray area and the complexity.
There's
a
gray
it's
area.
so much more interesting.
And,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you get up in front of like a Jewish audience and then people are like, oh, this is interesting. Or they give you this rebellious quality or something like that.
Well, I always feel like an imposter because I'm not Lubavitch. I was only a little girl when that happened, but it's still.
Right.
But we grew up with the same in that community, with the same we continue to do without my father in the house. So I always felt kind of this. What are we doing? We're doing everything, but we're not exactly in the community, but we're kind of out. And
So
then
you're
I
outsider
even on
identity?
myself
Yeah.
went
Yeah.
further. Yeah, we were, because once my mother was divorced, that was, kind of not a great, she wasn't, I don't think, as embraced by the community when we moved back. The idea was to try and get her back with my father and this and that. And so we were kind of now doing it on our own island. And then we were starting to go, instead of to, separate boys and girls schools, really religious, we went to Jewish schools that were conservative, but to me seemed basically much less religious. Now, to anyone else, it still seems, they were maybe a little bit modern Orthodox or that sort of thing, which seems very religious to people.
This is really
What do you
interesting.
mean?
I don't know. I kind of, I just thought when you described, I saw a couple clips of interviews and stuff that you were Chabad Montreal or Chabad Crown Heights, and there's this homogenous or monolithic thing. But this is interesting in your story.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I want to. So it seems like, because in the research we did, it seems like when people ask you to give a bio, you'll lean into that bio. Of
Yeah.
Like ex-Hasidic.
Yeah.
Here I am now. But then talking to you, that's not actually.
Well, I'm not
like,
Hasidic, so I wouldn't say that I'm Hasidic now. No, it definitely is X,
Right,
definitely
right.
something I was born into, but I definitely still have a connection, I would say. Like, even being gay, like when I found out I was gay, and I say I found out because I wasn't a kid that was like, what am I going to do? Like, I really was like a kid for a long time. I don't know that I thought so much about these things as much. I flirted with boys. I liked the attention of boys, but it was always on a funner. It was never a deeper thing for me. It was kind of like that was the thing to do. Like we're starting to hang out with guys. We're teenagers, whatever. I'm in. But it never. And then when I found out I was gay, I'm like, oh my God, I can't do another thing. I was supposed to be, marry rich and be done with this. Like, what am I gonna make
Another
money
thing that
now?
would further isolate you mean? Or?
Yeah, like, well, what am I? I already have single mother of 10 kids. We're poor, which how do you even get born Jewish and poor anymore? I felt like that was a psycho thing to happen to us already.
Yeah.
So and then now I got to do gay. Gay seems, who needs it? But I never felt like Hashem was mad at me. Like it was the weirdest thing. I always have felt some level of protection or understanding of like, I don't know. I've just never, I guess I am spiritual and I oscillate between how spiritual I am and how religious I get and unreligious. And I wouldn't consider myself still religious, but I guess to other people doing anything, traditional or religious is religious.
Yeah.
But from how religious I was born, to me, it doesn't seem like I'm religious at all. But always throughout that, I never felt like God wouldn't get it. Like it always felt like somebody, like a person or something. It never felt like, from what I learned about God or even other people's religions, when they talk about Jesus, I'm like, he seems nice. Like, I don't feel like, you're a nice guy and you're not, you know what I mean? So, and he's supposed to be nicer than you. So I couldn't ever connect that I would like get in trouble or something. If anything, he would talk to me.
But when you're 19 and you come out to your family and friends, like how does that work? I'm
So
just
I
curious,
was
like
outed.
what kind of reaction that received? Because it seems like there was other things that led up to it that were already making you feel like this was just a sort of a cherry on top of like another thing that would risk making you feel more isolated or estranged from the community.
Right. Well, I wasn't in that community. So we were now in a more secular, like I was still, I went to a conservative Jewish school, high school, elementary school. And I was the most religious kid at that school because we were still kosher at home. Not only were we kosher, and we were kosher in the house, outside of the house, we had 2 separate dishes. We did Shabbos. We did all the holidays crazy. We did Kippuris with the coins. We had chickens at some point. We were doing like everything Lubavitch because that's what my mother knew. Yeah. And so even though we were going to these schools that were less so, maybe like the school you were talking about growing up, where we still did the traditions and it was very like Zionist heavy and more Israel focused. True. The traditions that we did were all, fasting and, all of that stuff. So I was always the most religious kid. At 18, 19, when I was outed, I actually wasn't worried about my family. I was worried about my friends because I went to this type of conservative school, which is only a nuance that I think Jews to Jews understand. It's like, yes, they weren't Lubavitch, they weren't Hasidic, but they were really traditional. Like it wasn't just gay kids floating around.
Not like it is now.
So,
I feel like
and I was
now it's much more inclusive, but then it was...
Exactly. And like, I was friends with a group of like 8 girls, super close. We were like, that was like my group. And they were all very traditional. And I was really worried at that age. I think you're mostly into your social life. So I was so worried to lose my social life. My family life, this is the one period in my life where I was a little distant from my family. Not anything to do with religion, because they were all not leaving the religion with me, but I would say adjusting how we did religion with me, because my mother, we all calmed down a bit. But I was, because of my teenagehood and moving out and living on my own and doing school and, finding my sexuality or whatever, I wasn't so close with my family because I was mostly preoccupied with my social life. So that was the biggest thing. And that was a big bomb on my social life. My friends thought I lied to them and, they didn't handle it well at the time. Oh, interesting. Which is interesting. I had a friend who told me on our birthright trip, no less, to Israel, that, she could not support the lifestyle I had. Now, of course, her brother was a flaming homosexual and she couldn't deal with this. So she took it out on me, and we all see that in hindsight.
Was he out at the time?
No, but his bar mitzvah theme was Cats the musical.
There you go.
So was he out or was he out? I don't know. I don't know if that's on the parents at that point.
They all knew. Yeah.
So that was the hardest. And then with my family, it was so weird because my mother was probably at her least religious point, and now she's religious again, which is interesting because I guess that's a theme in my family. But my mother didn't care. Like I was like, Ma, I have a girlfriend. She's blonde. She's like, does she want to come for Shabbos? I'm like, nobody wants to come here. But
I can't get the image of this bar mitzvah boy in a cat uniform going up together.
no, literally, like he was like that, like thanks for coming. Like it was that stereotypical.
But that's interesting. Your friends at the time, they were
not down. Yeah. And my family, at this point, so many things had happened in my family. I have 9 siblings. I had a brother who had a baby out of wedlock. I had a sister who was dating, a practicing Muslim dude, which was the biggest issue at that point. Right. Like that was like
that is so much more hardcore, I think, than being gay.
Well, that's but my family took that way crazier.
So
dating
people had
outside
paved
of
the way
faith.
in your family for drama or
right.
whatever.
So by the time I'm gay, they're like we got. Listen,
they're like, sure, okay, you're just trying to keep up with the.
It was a time in my family where everything was chaotic, or we were all finding ourselves, and so to pinpoint on one person or another just didn't really happen. But the social thing was a concern to me. And since then, by the way, I've gotten an apology from all those girls. It wasn't in the zeitgeist the way it is now.
Sure. Now it's like you're straight. Come on.
I know. So much embarrassing. Embarrassing.
Do you have completely different friends now? Like
I do. Yeah. I have. I mean, I'm still friends. I would say I'm still friendly. Your lives get different, and but I'm still close with some of my high school friends. I'm not close with the whole group, but only because I have so many. You find your own people and stuff like that, and I have a lot of queer friends and comedic friends and artist friends, and
you're like you're in the like LA comedy scene.
You bet, yeah.
Like serious like Hollywood. Thing.
Yeah,
it's cool.
Yeah. You ever been? The way he says
he's made us to live there.
I lived there for 10 years. I was doing music most of the time, music for TV, commercials.
Yeah.
My band is based there. We play all around LA, and now we're in 3 cities. But I was pretty active and still am in the music scene. And recently, I've been doing comedy over the last few years. But you're based there now. You're writing. You're a TV writer, stand-up.
Yeah.
Work in that scene.
Yeah, I've been doing stand-up there for a while.
How long have you been doing it for?
You know what? It's hard to say. I always say that I was kind of there. I guess I'm going, over 5 years now. I guess a year and a half of that, 2 years, I was back here working on a show, but I kept my apartment. So I consider that that I was still in LA during that time. I feel like if you keep an apartment anywhere, you also live there. Yeah. But what a lot of people don't know is like this Canadian constituent of me, where I grew up in Canada. I started stand-up really in Montreal, maybe a year and a half, and then I moved to Toronto, and that's when I really started doing stand-up
like
seriously.
There's like a lot of culture in Toronto. Like
it's
wouldn't
really
have
underrated.
known it if someone didn't tell me that.
Really underrated. The stand-up's phenomenal there. Kind of what I would consider my first home club was there. Shout out to the Comedy Bar. But Toronto was like where I really started hitting the pavement stand-up, doing it kind of nightly because they just had more shows than Montreal. And then I moved to LA, back to New York. Now I'm back in LA, and I kind of, not to sound elitist, but I have kind of a bi-coastal situation. And now sometimes I've been back in New York quite a bit now.
So we're like fans from afar on like the podcast comedy scene. So it's fun to meet someone who's like really in it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to like fanboy too much, but it's like, it's just interesting that like, I asked you about your friends from Montreal because I'm like, if I could hang out with like those dudes, like I would never talk to anyone I grew up with. Like they just seem like seems like really interesting and fun and cool.
No, exactly. And so I do, and I don't think anybody's better than anyone, but some people, they're living a life that I've seen 1,000 times. I'm just not living that life, and they have kids and they're doing great. It's just I never imagined my life, but I didn't grow up I grew up dreaming secretly, but we didn't openly dream in my house. Like I wouldn't say that my mother encouraged, not that she discouraged, but there wasn't this idea you could be anything you wanted to be.
Yeah.
They're just, so I didn't even really know of this. I have no clue, but I knew what my friends are doing now. That life I knew.
Yeah.
So it didn't feel new or anything.
Just take me back a little bit. So when you first were pursuing this as a writer and comedian or just trying the creative path, Because we talk a lot about like the pressures we felt in the modern Orthodox Jewish community of sticking to certain career paths. You know, there are certain approved.
What are they for the modern Orthodox?
You know, professions like doctor and lawyer, and then finance,
Doctor, lawyer,
and
finance,
those kind of things.
Well, and also, and just a caveat on that, it's modern Orthodox, but I think it's also growing up like upper middle class in the tri-state area.
Right.
Like I didn't know anyone in entertainment growing up. I still like know very few people. Like there were no models for someone who would like write professionally or do film professionally like at all from the East Coast.
And there were these caricatures of like, oh, the music business, that's a very tricky business. I hear it like the entertainment. Yes, very few people make it, but nobody says that from experience. They're saying that because it is true that I think our religious lifestyle and an upper middle class lifestyle requires stable, like, you know, it lends itself to having stable careers, stable income. And our parents are boomers who came from Holocaust survivors. My parents were from Holocaust survivors.
Exactly.
So they were hyper motivated to, you know, succeed and be ambitious. And, you know, my dad was always like, got to keep your eye on the ball. And the ball was a big ball of cash. Like that was the idea.
Yeah.
So they were just very hesitant and worried about careers that took longer to develop, that you had to play the long game and develop over time. And you could see success, but it took much longer to do that.
Yeah, and also they were like, you know, maybe projecting a bit. You know, they didn't do their own dreams. Maybe they didn't get to dream or something like that. And the thing is...
Well, I don't think it was an option for them, really.
No, exactly. You know, I think what's surprising is I make a pretty nice living, Baruch Hashem. You know, I will say that, you know... I do okay, folks. You know, not
so
to
like
get
how
like
much
to,
a year?
I would say probably like a moderately sized dentist. And I don't think that people would.
A dentist is nice.
No,
He's a
I-
dentist.
No, I
She
would
does
say
very
that-
well.
I would say that financially, I wouldn't have known either. The thing is my path. My path will explain the money stuff a lot because I grew up extremely poor, which again I think is horrendous luck in the Jewish community in the year that I was born. Okay, when you think about it, okay, even to have been modern Orthodox or whatever, conservative, upper middle class, I would have taken middle class. Okay, but this was, you know.
Well, most people, I think most families with 10 kids also don't have like a ton to go
No,
around.
of course not. They always Jew the big fat. Like they always.
Did you know
like,
you were poor when you were growing up?
We know.
You know.
You know you're poor. You got nothing.
Even in Crown Heights compared to the other families, you were poor?
No, we were poor with other, like, we would insult each other, like, you're poor. We're like, you're poor too.
The whole
Like,
community was?
Yeah, we were poor. The
Right.
community was poor. There was some Jews who worked in diamonds or something in
A few
Montreal.
mockers who paid
There
for
were
everything.
no restaurants in Crown Heights back then. Or like
Well, I
people
don't know.
weren't
I
going
was
out.
young, but even in Montreal, we lived in the we lived in the Hasidic neighborhood. I would say we had there was one family up the block that was like involved in diamonds, and they had converted their duplex to one house. So that was rich.
They hosted everything.
But then when I went to the rich private school on subsidy through the Jewish community, that's when I was like the poorest kid at the richest school, and that's when I met Jews like you.
Right.
What you would call upper middle class or middle class and up. But so when I got into school, I applied. I applied to school to McGill because I was in Montreal and it was free to apply.
The Harvard of Canada.
Yeah, or we call Harvard the McGill of the U.S. There's two ways that can go.
Was there a conversation growing up about like you're saying career or like was it pressure to do one thing or another or it just didn't
No
come up much
pressure
at all?
whatsoever. We were not considered in that way.
Right.
I moved out at like 18 years old.
You didn't feel anything was expected necessarily.
Nothing was expected.
Right.
Zero. My mother, if anything, would say school's not for everyone.
Better
She
or
didn't
worse than where
encourage-
we have it? I
she-
don't know. In terms of pressure, I don't know.
Different.
You know what? I relate to people's grandparents so well.
Yeah.
Like if I'm in a house with grandparents,
That's so funny.
I'm by the end of the night, they're like, here's my number, come over. Like
Right.
because we had the same hunger, nobody is hungrier than me.
Right.
I'm always insatiable. I'm always starving. I never feel
Always
it's
take
enough.
some eggs with you.
Right, like you need a war to volunteer for to change your fortune.
What's that?
Like my grandfather went
Yes.
to World War II, so he was able to go to college, and like you could have used a good war.
Yeah, I could have. Yeah, me at the war. I can't see. I just remember playing like sports in
Did
high
I
school.
shoot the right way? Wow.
I was always like shoved somewhere in the outfield. I don't know why they forced that. We were like, and I was in the outfield. We would have to do sports for an hour or something. I'm like, I can't see now. This ball's never coming. I'm in the middle of the sun. I'm like this. My glove is out. I got no clue what's going on. I can't see. So
That
me
was
in a war,
me.
I don't know. That's every Jew, I think. Though
Yeah.
we're like
I was playing music. I was not doing sports, and I
Gay.
hate that. I hate the gay.
Gay. Well, back then they would have thought that.
He does
Yeah,
like to
maybe we
dance
can
and
rate our
sing.
gayness. What do you think? We're concealing
No,
it.
and you're not. But
You could tell right away.
No, bisexual maybe.
On a very special episode, buckle up. But you're hungry. You
So
like
yeah,
you,
so I
you have
applied to
that
McGill,
drive
and I
that
was like,
people
"What's the
don't
least
have.
amount of school?" I got in. I got in a scholarship for the first year. So I said, "What's the least amount of school for the most amount of payoff?" I went into accounting. I got a good job like that because they were like, "They'll give you a job. This like accounting and finance firms will hire you for the summer." And this company, they were like, "You can have a laptop." I'm like, "For keeps?" They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "I'm in," and it was great. I was making money, and.
And at this point, did you have like a creative ambition or drive?
No,
or
so
it was-
I
it
didn't.
just
But
didn't
as soon as I
exist?
wasn't poor, I could think. So here's the whole thing: is like I never the struggling artist thing does nothing for me. I can't wait to sell out. I'm like the first person to like, let's get bottles, models, Lamborghini. Like, let's just fucking go. Like the struggling artist thing, like I more have like a rapper mentality, maybe born in Brooklyn, where I'm like, oh, we're going. Like the struggling guy in the guitar,
No nobility and poverty.
busking on the corner. That was not the route, I just,
That's for people who know they're going to be okay.
they're okay to share an apartment with 16 people. No, I've already been poor. I have no interest in revisiting. It does nothing for me. I'll work at the bank. If this didn't, so during
once
that
you
time,
had some financial stability, you could think that's really interesting, and then you could start to say, okay, now that's covered in terms of stability, passion, interest.
I always wrote in high school, and my mother. It's so funny. My mother was a really big support of my writing and my short stories, and I wrote a short story for school that got some attention, and so I knew I had some of that. And I
Comedic
was a
writing,
class
sensibility.
clown, but that was a little bit embarrassing because I was a girl, and girls are annoying when they're loud. I'm still annoying and loud. I just don't care. But it was less like, it just wasn't cool for a girl to be the class clown, and I was that, but I always felt annoying. And now I still feel annoying, but I don't really care. But
did you kill in class?
yeah.
You must
I
have
was the
killed.
funny one with the friends and the whole thing, but it still felt like
You felt self-conscious about it?
I did feel self-conscious because it was like cute or not to be, but then I got hot and then I got boys again. So I don't know. But people started noticing, oh, she's kind of also hot. And I leaned into that.
Yeah.
Whatever I got, I kind of like went, I was like, okay, let's capitalize.
Any positive feedback? It was like
It was good. It was good. So then I discovered stand-up sometime around that in university. Montreal had the Just for Laughs Festival, which is the biggest festival. So I hadn't really, my brothers had listened to some stand-up at home and whatever, but nothing I really, I remember them talking about Patrice O'Neill or this and that, but I didn't, I wasn't into my my brothers were hell on earth to me at those years, So I was having dinner with friends, and I just decided, I said, I was killing this dinner. I was telling stories without realizing how annoying it is to be on. When you're on,
I say the Shabbos lunch is Ami's canvas.
the meal is great.
That's when I think I can do this. I have premises here, and they're just destroying.
Yeah.
They're destroying.
The stage is a different story, but
You're getting there.
You're feeling that energy.
Yeah, and I just said like, hey, I think I'm gonna do stand up, and they weren't like, everybody was like, yeah, that sounds like it could work, and I just really started then, and then I got into writing because I thought I started really looking into stand ups, and like I was like, Jerry Seinfeld was a stand up before his show, and like Ellen's a stand up but has a show, like all the biggest famous ones that you could think of, because obviously I wasn't in the world of stand up. I didn't know like Mitch Hedberg or whatever the other levels are. And so I just assumed everybody wrote. And that's when I wrote my first script and really and then I got attention for that and everything. I just always kept doing both.
Even for stand-up itself, when I was first getting started, and I'd been conversationally funny over the years and thought of ideas and stuff, but most of, if not all of my creative energy was going into music. And then when I started doing social media stuff, I started putting sketches and bits together. And then I heard Jerry Seinfeld on a podcast. I was like, how am I going to do this on stage? Like, I don't know, like, where do you start when you get up on a mic? And he said something very clarifying to me. It's one of the simplest ideas ever, but he was on a podcast with Tim Ferriss, and he goes, so Jerry, how does it work? He's like, good stand-up is good writing.
Yeah.
And I just, when he said that, it kind of just pierced through vibe and style and all those things that will come naturally with time. But what's going on is, there's really technique. Just like when you go to a music show, you think they're just like jamming.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot of depth and technique and timing and dynamics.
Yeah.
All of things that I was comfortable with, but just having to translate into stand-up. So it's like we were saying.
Yeah,
they were
and
all
also the
writers.
better you get at it, the more you can break the rules. It's funny,
Yes.
some people will watch an episode of Atlanta, and be like, nothing's happening. Because Donald Glover is so skilled at television writing that actually it's like a science, and actually he knows, like, for sure at the bottom of the second half it feels like there's an all is lost moment. Like, he is so skilled
Sure.
at the laws or whatever that is of writing that he can now play with them. Just like Louis C.K., who's so good at stand-up. Some new stand-ups get up and they just decide they're going to talk because that's what they think Louis is doing.
Exactly.
No, Louis is so good that he knows every rule he's breaking. And the thing is he's done it so many times that I do agree that for Jerry Seinfeld's kind of comedy, stand-up is writing. But I think that some people get so into that's a style. I think for a Louis C.K., for instance, he's writing on the fly. His writing is so good. It's on the fly, and then he also writes on top of it or whatever.
It's not
He
mutually
actually
exclusive.
said recently that if he has an idea, he won't write it down because he needs to work it out verbally on stage with an audience, or else it loses that magic
Yes.
of being, stationary on a
Yes,
piece of paper.
because he's done the writing so much that now actually
There's a
it's
foundation.
freshest when he writes his first draft from his head
Is already
is the
good.
yeah.
But to me, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. It's more.
What does mutually exclusive mean?
What
Everybody's
does it
always
mean?
saying this.
That the idea is like Jerry Seinfeld's comedy and Louis C.K.'s comedy actually have a lot more in common of what they're doing. It's just that they're not mutually exclusive.
Meaning they can't both be true. Either one is true. If one's true, the other's false.
That's what
Okay, but
mutually
can they
exclusive-
both be true?
No,
If
mutually
they're not mutually exclusive, that means they can both be true.
Okay, wait.
If they are-
Sorry to hiccup
Double
this.
negative, sorry.
Okay, if they're not mutually exclusive.
they can both be true.
Okay, I think they're both true. So they're
Correct.
not
Not mutually
mutually.
They're not
So
mutually exclusive.
mutually exclusive means if one exists, the other one's not.
Yeah, one falsifies
What
the other.
a
It's either this,
difficult.
Like,
it's
what a
either this way or the
difficult-
other. It's exclusive. It's exclusively this way or
Yeah, but
that
the
way.
mutually is what's exclusive. I can
Mutually
understand.
as in together, they can't exist at the
Okay,
same time.
I that's an amazing.
So if
this-
they're-
I'll
Michael's better at
picture it.
explaining the vocabulary.
No, that
He's-
was a
he's the
perfect.
writer.
I needed the
pretty
visual.
good.
It's like,
Like Israel, Palestine, someone would say are mutually exclusive. If you can't have both, either one or the other.
We had to
doesn't
go
exist.
there.
Okay.
That's the
We
example?
gotta get the soundbite.
Okay, they're
That, yeah.
mutually exclusive, so you can't have one without the other.
No,
No,
you can only have one or the other.
Yeah.
Okay, but not mutually.
In other words,
exclusive
if I
means
said-
you can have both.
Yeah.
It's two-state
When I
solution.
say Jerry Seinfeld,
Beautiful.
when I say Seinfeld and Louis C.K. are not mutually exclusive, their approaches are both kind of based on the same fundamental principles. I think.
Yeah.
It's just that what Louis is doing is Seinfeld is sticking to his script almost like a classical musician, like playing it note
Yeah.
for note. And Louis has this foundation of comedy and timing and how things work, and then can play a little bit, almost like a jazz band.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
it's-
And he goes out, but if people watch Louis and they have no musical training, it's like watching
Yes.
a jazz band saying, "Oh, I'll just get up and jam." They're just making noise
Yeah.
up there, and the set falls apart. And I've seen it with comics who just bomb because they're trying to vibe, and they don't
Exactly.
have any written foundation. Louis has written foundation.
No, I think you have to start from that. It's the same with anything. Like Picasso, like when people start to tell me, people start an art and they do abstract only art. I go, listen, first draw a face.
Yes.
And then fuck around. Picasso had the blue period. He could draw you exactly. Okay. But then he gets away with doing the line and whatever. But
So-
people coming in just with the scribbles without
Correct.
also be able to draw a tree.
Yeah.
And-
it's so discouraging because I finally have like an open set, an open mic set. I think I want to do.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, it's very Louis C.K.
So,
And
That's
now I'm
fine
thinking
as
if I
an
get up there and
inspiration.
try it, I'm just gonna like totally.
oh,
like,
you
it's
got to
not
do
gonna be
this.
good.
I got to see you do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I just mean like when I've had a set that really works and flows that I've like worked out, I understand, and you can sort of see once you cut, like I always like creatively, my instinct is always to demystify something.
Yeah.
I hear a piece of music or something, I want to know exactly what's going on. Michael likes to sit in mystery and wonder. That's his approach, right? We always debate about this.
In general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like not knowing is almost, but my instinct is always,
Yeah.
I get a lot of fulfillment out of like figuring out exactly what's going on, whether it's a piece of music, but with comedy too, once you kind of start the process of kind of writing stand-up and doing it, you realize, You see the setup, punch, structure,
Yeah, and the
all
thing
that.
is everybody's right. I mean, I've been struggling with this recently where I've been talking about like I don't know what's right anymore. Like with anything. So it's like I think the way that you explain that is 100% right. But I also think that it could be 100% right that there are different styles, improv and one is written. You know, I also think like fine, they're both in the same form. Like,
But
it's
they're
like,
not mutually exclusive.
right. Like I feel like
It's true with
you know,
any
it's
craft.
like with the Israel-Palestine thing.
Yeah.
Like if you explain it to me from the Palestinian side, I go, they're 100% right. Can't argue.
Yeah.
Like if that, I hear what you're saying. They're 100% right. And then my brother will say something about Israel. I'll be like, he's got a point. Like I don't know
You're-
what is right anymore.
you're high in
I,
openness.
There's too much. Right. Whoever's perspective you come from is who's right. So it's like,
Right.
if you think that stand-up is coming from the same general perspective, then it is for you. If you think that it's going to start from this other thing and get like, I don't know.
But like with any craft that you dive into and you learn the fundamentals, the rules, the foundations, everyone has this experience. The deeper and deeper you go, you're like, oh, no,
But then
none
some
of it's
people
true.
invent
You can
a
do
thing.
any. But I just mean the deeper you go past
Yeah.
it, then you realize how much you can push, and then you realize, everything and nothing. Like you can do anything, and you have to do something. So it's really that balance, and you go through phases where you're like, these are the parameters I'm going to set for myself, and then you push past. You're like, oh, wait a minute, no, like you can find the
Yeah.
contradictions.
We spoke
which-
about this last time. We're like, now everyone needs to have a take. So like that's like the takeification. There has to be a way to do it. And like I have to go on TikTok and be able to put it into a minute long
Yeah.
Yeah.
soundbite that then people follow. But like
The Rick
there's-
Rubin stuff,
There's
you
no
mean?
take on it, right? There's no great take on it. It's just
Yeah,
everyone has
we've
their
made
own
up
different style.
every possible thing you could think of.
Right.
They're all constructs.
and
stuff.
Rick-
Do you know
and
what I
they're all
mean?
well said. And
Like
well
Rick Rubin saying the
argued.
dangers of advice. He says that I don't like
Right.
giving advice because the second you give something advice, it formulates it into a specific way to do something,
Yeah.
which is limiting and not
Yeah.
always true. It worked in my case.
I got his book, by the way.
Yeah.
Who?
Rick Rubin. You know
Oh.
Rick
You know Rick
Rubin?
Rubin?
I don't know.
Famous music producer, huge
Oh
beard.
yeah, I love him.
Yeah.
So he wrote this book. It looks like those old like Shiloh sitters, like the blue ones.
Yeah,
that are, like,
yeah.
cloth.
Shiloh.
Yeah. So that's the cover. So already it's just like comfortable and
Oh,
nice.
he knows
And
what he's
I
doing.
wrote.
You
I-
Davin from the book.
Yeah,
You just-
the
literally.
first 10 page. It's some of the best paragraphs on creativity I've ever read in like the first couple
Wow.
pages. He's like, you should check it out.
Is there a movie that I can watch?
He's amazing and he's very
probably
open.
not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would because I reading. I find I haven't.
Yeah.
Reading takes everything.
But he has
out
an
of
audio.
me.
He does it in
I
audiobooks too,
know,
and he's
I
got
know,
a
Joey.
soothing voice, and it's
I
very
know,
relaxing.
He's unreal.
So something I've been talking about with a good friend of mine recently was since COVID, it is so hard to get anyone to get out of their house and actually hang out.
Right.
And it's something we talk about a lot. Just getting off your ass and doing something
Mm-hmm.
is like exponentially harder than it was before COVID. So if you don't want to leave your house, but you still want to see your friends, we want to introduce you to PokerChill, a fan of the podcast, our first sponsor. PokerChill started a really cool app where you can sit around a virtual poker table, chill with your friends, and consequently also play a little bit of poker. If you don't know how to play poker, it's still okay. It's still a great way to see your friends.
So you don't actually get out; it's all virtual.
That's the thing.
So
You
it
don't-
doubles down on people's
you
hesitancy
don't
to hang
have to
out.
leave your house. You don't have to actually put effort into seeing your friends. You don't have to even like your friends that much.
It's poker for hypochondriacs who still think COVID is a thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
For the overly vaccinated, or for people who refuse to get the vaccine but are still terrified of COVID,
Right.
PokerChill is for you.
Mm-hmm.
There's no money involved. There's no discount code. It's just really just to hang out with your friends. I've never played poker.
Mm-hmm.
I have no interest in poker,
You've never chilled.
and I find myself using the app constantly. Constantly.
I use it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, playing just by myself.
You and I, when
Yes.
we're not recording, we're usually in poker.
When
chill,
Michael
just
and I
chilling.
aren't buckle upping, we are poker chilling.
Yeah. Yeah. So check it out, PokerChill.
Check out
in
Poker-
the App Store,
Yeah.
and don't leave your house because it's dangerous out there, and people are trying to hurt you.
Don't leave your full house. Poker chill.
PokerChill.
This is off topic and it's kind of circling back to where
Yeah.
we started, so forgive me. But with all the conversations that are going now, it's like so dominant in the culture of everything being political, everything
Yeah.
being about tribal group identity, LGBTQ community, and left, right, center, whatever it may be. It sounds like your story, from what you described to us, is it's so uniquely you and different. Like, do you connect with any of that stuff, or is that just not worth the stress?
I do, but I just like live my life. Like, I don't think it's the hard, I connect more with, and I think that, there's room for everything. I don't think I think it's, somebody was saying, and it's maybe a more famous saying, and I regret that I don't have the credit, but somebody was saying, not all struggles are equal, but they're connected. And I think there's room for all of them. My struggle that I connect with most is poverty. And I think that poverty, to me, feels like a broader umbrella for a lot of these issues. And but it's just not a fun hot button issue to talk about. Talking about meat and potato jobs and poverty and people eating is just like not that glitzy for mainstream media. It's not going to get, but I didn't think about who I was or anything when I was poor. Right. Like, if you have to eat, you got to eat. Nobody cared that I was gay, nothing. Like, we cared about so many other things.
That's a luxury to have those stresses.
I think, for me, it
of
felt
identity
like it. And it's not to say, listen, there's a lot of people who are in, I am also fortunate that I was in, metropolitan cities, New York, Montreal, Toronto, Los Angeles, where, there's a lot of LGBT. But if you're in some shit town and you're poor and you have that, and that is a risk to you or something, then you can, speak to that, because that's that, but for me personally, where my heart goes is still, I feel like a Moses getting out of a poor community. I'm the circle I'm around. The people that I rub elbows with are now, I feel like I'm a fly on the wall. I feel like I got somewhere I shouldn't get. And I always want to return to, that's how I feel.
The struggle you most identify with was that of poverty and getting out of that.
And I think that's where, so in terms of when,
so
somebody
much more
asked
universal,
me,
it transcends out so many
somebody
different
asked me what I think about this trans girl in the pool. Did you hear about this trans swimmer, Leah Thomas?
Yes, Leah Thomas.
She's a trans swimmer.
In college?
You must get those quite about
male to female.
Yeah.
She is at an Ivy League school, I think Penn U University.
Yeah, Penn State, Penn U, whatever.
She's at Penn U.
Yeah.
It's like $80K a year. There's 12 girls in the pool. Okay, and somebody wanted to ask me, what do I think of this trans girl? How unfair it is. Look how tall she is. This trans girl in the pool with all these other girls. And when I look at the pool, I see 12 white kids in the pool, and I go, "You want to tell me these are the best swimmers in college? Why don't we give one girl from the Bronx lessons from 2, and then you fucking ask me who the best swimmer is." I don't care about rich kids in a pool, trans or otherwise, period. I don't care. There's 12 rich kids in a pool. Bye. That's how much thought I give it. So you're not going to get me on the bait of, there's this. No, I don't care. Like, I see a way bigger issue.
Do you get asked to represent those things, though? Do you get
no? But when I get asked, I think there's room for having opinions on those issues, and I think that they can. Again, I never know what is right. I think that I think oppressing people, or but I think there's room for. But for me personally, I just wish poverty took up more of the conversation.
Yeah,
because it affects more people, queer, not queer, black, white.
And the reason it doesn't is because it's an actual threat to power. The right-left is not really a threat to power. So they're like, talk about that all day.
Exactly. They both use that as a distraction. I feel that me
What's
as
that?
I don't think that's conspiracy.
No, I think it's right.
I think it's like economically minded. Like, I mean, I heard this guy say, I forgot his name, but he was like, if with the 1619 Project, Bank of America was sponsoring the book tour, and he's like, if Bank of America is sponsoring your book tour, the one thing you can be sure of is you're not a threat to the existing power structures.
No, exactly.
Like, good. Talk about
to me, right and left, Republican, Democrats, the same party. For me, I see rich versus poor, and they're both. They use these issues, and as a queer person, I don't care to be used. There are some real issues in being queer, fine, but I don't care to be used as a distraction from the rich taking for the poor. I don't care that I don't care to be used in that way. as
or
a
to turn people
distraction.
against each other.
Yeah.
You mean in these power structures?
Yeah.
Let them quibble and fight over these non-issues, so
Right.
to speak, or
Yeah,
these
that affect
trivial
less
issues
people.
that are
Yeah.
not really,
Right, right.
as
Yeah.
consequential as not being able to eat.
Because if all the poverty-stricken people were
Yeah.
to unite in some way and vote in a certain way, that might actually
I hear that.
affect some
Exactly.
change.
There's something to be said about this all being champagne problems. Like, remember Oscar's So White, that campaign, Oscar's So White, Oscar's So White. I was with this, I think it was a drummer who looked at me as it was going on, and Will Smith was complaining that he wasn't nominated because of discrimination, even though Jamie Foxx won 2 years earlier. But this kid was like, who cares? Stop complaining. You're all rich. Go home.
But,
Like,
and
you didn't
here's
get your
the whole thing.
your award. Go home. You're
Yeah,
all
and-
rich. You're fine. Like
Yeah.
you will be okay, Will Smith. And he's like, and he claimed that it was the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
next
since
year,
then I don't think he's going to be nominated. And there's issues to that. I'm not going to speak to that because I think that there's a real system of racism for sure that needs to be talked about that affects a lot of people. But I also agree completely with you, Michael, that it's
Tell me truth.
heightened this idea that we should focus on our differences rather than what we have in common. And they're really grasping for differences now so that we can be mad at them, and they're hot button and they're like confusing things to people, and they get people irate and distracting from what we have in common, which is a massive income inequality
Right.
in this nation. And I think you're totally, that's where
Even
poverty.
the Ohio train now, if you
Ugh.
watch The View, they're like, well, that county voted for Trump. And it's
That was
it's
crazy.
they're poor. like that's the issue. That
Yeah.
there's no lawyers in that town, so they can't sue anybody.
It's
like,
crazy.
you're trying to
and there's
make it
certainly a lot of
Trump
people
Biden
claiming to
thing.
do things on behalf of people less fortunate or use them
there's
as
a lot
political
of
pawns.
performative. There's a lot of,
Performative.
yeah.
This is wrong, and it's always easy to say you can do good for them with other people's money and then make these platitudes and claims that you're going to help, and then you just walk away from the problems with no account. It doesn't affect you. Whatever
Yeah.
the consequences of these politicians' policies are, whatever they try to do, they feel good about themselves, tap themselves on the back, but they walk away.
Even this Chinese balloon, I'm going, this is just a balloon that
Is there
they're
food in there?
looking
Shoot
at
it
us
down.
through the computer. What does the balloon sing? A field of corn?
Yeah.
What's the view from the balloon?
Yeah,
Somebody
you're right.
watering the
They're
what is it
listening
even?
to us now on
They're
our
literally.
TikTok.
That's when you wake up about they're spying on us when we have this.
Yeah.
But there was this argument of the Occupy Wall Street a lot. Like people who criticized it, there was this point that's resonant. I'm not sure if you'll fully agree with this, but they would say I think a lot of these kids out there protesting are upper middle class. Who can afford? What working class person can afford to sit there in the park day after day after day, reading Marx on the floor, whatever it may be? They're all in NYU
Yeah,
or
but
whatever
they
it
were-
may be.
You know what? It was a start. But I think
You may-
even,
you may
even
con-
if it comes from the rich, we need.
Yeah.
It's like for women to get rights, we need men. So for women to vote,
Right.
we needed men to
Right.
allow that. We needed men on our side
Right.
to be like, you know what, you're a person.
I'm just
with
saying,
a
who are the
brain.
people actually? They may be
So we might need
pointing to
rich
something,
people.
but who?
Like you coming from an upper middle class saying what you said is rare for me to hear. And it feels like allyship.
Well, things now are also trickling upward for it was
Michael
really,
identifies as poor.
well, it's harder now.
Now that he's had kids.
It's hard. Take for instance, the AI technology replacing jobs. When it was happening to people working in retail, it wasn't a problem. Now that it's happening maybe to doctors and lawyers,
Yes.
now it's going to become, oh, well, we can't stand for this. What do you mean we have to re-educate ourselves? That's
Yeah.
not okay. You need to help us, government. So
Yeah.
you're saying now it's trickling a little bit upwards to people like me who find it harder to get a job or harder to whatever.
You
excel or
hit me
whatever
up,
it is.
Michael. You got something doing. You hit me up, okay?
Me, I've
Sorry,
outed
your project.
myself
No,
as
and
right
then
of center.
You'll be doing the music. No, you'll be doing the music. We have some songs. We need some songs from you.
We do
Okay.
Yeah.
a buddy
Yeah.
cop
Yeah.
movie maybe.
Yeah.
Buddy.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, Robby, thank you so much for being on Buckle Up, episode 54 in our
It's a good
New
number.
City studio. We're going to see if we can make it work here.
Yeah, our first attempt. Thank you
Yes.
so
Really
much.
good.
We really appreciate it. It was a
Thank
pleasure
you for
talking to you,
having
getting to know
me.
you.
Yeah.
Getting
Thank
to know
you.
you. That's Buckle Up, episode 54. Robby Hoffman, comedian, writer.
Follow me
Jew.
on Instagram,
Yes, where
Robby
can we find you?
Hoffman. And
Twitter too?
on Twitter for some semi-viral tweets.
Oh,
All right.
Okay, what do I have?
for
1,200 on a tweet a couple weeks ago. It happens
nice.
at I am Robby Hoffman. So.
Beautiful.
All right, cool. We'll put all that in the show notes.
Yeah,
and everything.
perfect.
Cool.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thanks for
Robby.
having us.
Thanks for having us.
Very
Thanks for having me.